that's my dad, and that's Josh's grandfather in front of Lamoille Schoolhouse. Kind of old school back in the day. I think they had a graduating class of about 5 or something. And when I was a kid and before, labor costs were pretty low because everybody helped each other, right? So this is my dad helping. I think it's probably the Bazzetti's or the Siliki's brand. You know, and everybody helped everybody else. Everybody else knew what everybody else was doing. It was very much a community, and it helped us all survive because we didn't have a lot of labor costs. We had one hired hand at our place. A lot of people just raised kids, and you know, neighbors helped each other when a big day was happening. By the late 50s, our cow herd looked a lot better. We started raising Angus in this valley a long time before anyone else did, and I think part of it was just because my dad didn't want to cut wattles and he wanted to be able to identify his own cows. But part of it is too, is we found that for us anyway, they were more tractable, they were less susceptible to pink eye and some of the other things that happened. They were also less susceptible to sunburn, which when you're in the high desert at 6,000 feet counts. So anyway, if you look around the valley, there are a few Hereford herds around, but almost everybody's raising Angus now. That's me. I come by it honestly. Still like red boots. So anyway, grew up on the ranch. We had a mother cow herd of around 300, which at the time was, you know, pretty decent family-sized ranch. You know, back in those days, the economics of ranching were such that you could raise a family, you know, with a mother cow herd of about 300 cows, and you know, it wasn't you know, certainly not an extravagant lifestyle, but I was able to go off and go to college and get a life, and couldn't get the dust from this town off my feet fast enough, and went off to save the world. And I came back in 2003 to take care of my dad. Over the years, he had downsized the ranch. I, you know, had no real intention of walking into the ranch. The thought all the way along was that my sister wanted to run it. And when push came to shove and it came time to divide things up after my father's death, suddenly I found myself the owner of a cattle ranch. Certainly was not in the plan. And I was faced with the choice because Dad had downsized over the years and ranching economy had changed. And now, with the way things work, you can either subdivide and live the life of Riley, or else you can face the reality that if you were in a commodity business, if you were buying your inputs based on commodity prices and you were selling based on commodity prices, that means the people on either side of you are making the money and you're not. And so over time, ranching economies had changed, and this was done in 2013. I don't know how well you can see that, but the upshot is that, yeah, so what a hay baler cost in 2013 was $40,000. What it should have cost, based on inflation, was $22,000. And so consistently, the price of our inputs almost doubled what they should have done based on inflation. But then if you look what we sell for, it kept up half of what inflation did. I mean, we're all celebrating happy days are here again, you know, $150 a hundredweight for a steer. But in reality, if we'd kept up with inflation, they'd be selling for $284 a hundredweight. That's the reality of ranching. And so I found myself having run businesses for some years with a cattle ranch that was too small to be viable. And so my choices were sell out and ski a lot, or start trying to figure out how to make really ugly math work. And being stubborn and dumb as a post, I decided to try and run the ranch. And so what that said is, in order to be able to be successful with it, I had to get out of the commodities game. I had to stop paying commodity prices for inputs. I had to stop selling for commodity prices. And so this was a little more than 10 years ago. And in looking around with what was going on in the market, the only real avenue for me to be able to make this business work was to create a grass-fed business, selling directly to boutique customers and restaurants, to not sell to the cattle buyers anymore, to keep my animals out of the auctions as much as I could, to sell direct to people who were themselves trying to build grass-fed businesses, or to sell direct to customers who are willing to pay a premium for a premium product. And that's what we ended up doing. So what that meant was that we needed to start doing something different with our genetics, because our herd was built for the production cattle industry. What we needed were animals that would finish well in our ecosystem in 18 months, and we did not have that cow herd. So we culled all of the cows that did not stay fat and raise a nice calf for us, pretty much living on dust and sagebrush. Our cow-calf operation is a couple miles that way. So these animals needed to weigh about 1,000 pounds. They needed to wean a 600-pound calf. They needed to look fat enough and have the body condition when they did that to be able to breed back and do the same thing efficiently year after year after year. So we culled everything that wouldn't work in that situation. We also started bringing in bulls that were bred specifically for a grass-fed operation. These animals were significantly smaller than production bulls. They were very thick, very heavy, very low to the ground, but very efficient. And they had ultrasound scores for very high marbling, for tenderness, for ribeye size. And overall, we ended up with calves that look like that after about, these ones are, I don't know, maybe 14 months old. And that's what we started to raise. And so my calves don't look like everybody else's calves because I have a different production model. I'm doing a different product. So anyway, it penciled out that, oh, this was another one. My dad would roll over in his grave if he saw this. One of the things we stopped doing was cutting hay. And we did that for a few reasons. One, I made a lot more money raising these animals out on this hay than I ever made selling hay, or money that I saved buying hay. It just made a lot more sense. And the other thing is, if you think about it, you know, hay, grass, is an expression of the nutrients in the soil, right? Well, why would I want somebody else who was not me and not on my ranch to take half of the nutrients that my soil produced every year and put it on their ranch? You know, if some other yo-yo wants to raise hay and let me have all of his nutrients, great, I'll buy it from him. And that's what I do. You know? So anyway, the cow-calf portion of what we do is still very traditional. But the rest of the ranch is not. And so it penciled out that our ranch can support 50 mother cows with as much as Dad is downsized and with the restrictions of the BLM and all that sort of stuff. And at that rate, with 50 mother cows, my husband doesn't have to work in mine. The ranch is self-supporting if we, you know, have this boutique client base. Well, we had a drought a couple of years ago, and the BLM sent a rancher in the state a letter that said, cut your mother cow herd or else we will. So here we are back to the drawing board. We needed to do something to be able to make it work. We needed to use our deeded land more productively than we were currently. We needed to be able to produce more protein per acre, more dollars per acre. But two, I needed to be able to enhance my soil health so that I could finish more steers. And so we got into the chicken business. So because we are who we are and we produce a super premium beef product, we also wanted to produce a super premium poultry product as well. And so we looked to France for the genetics there. There's a system that the French chefs developed over there called the Label Rouge system, which some of you may be familiar with. But they use a different breed of chicken and a different production model than even the pastured poultries do over here. I was recently at the American Pastured Poultry Producers Association, say that fast, in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and they asked, you know, how many people were raising, you know, Freedom Ranger chickens or anything other than corn-fed crosses, and I was the only person in the room whose hand went up. So I am a very tiny subset of a very tiny subset of the chicken business. But the thing about it is, I mean, it is incredible what they have done for my grass, which also means it is incredible what they have done for my stocking capacity for my steers, right? I mean, the first year, my dad had done flood irrigation on this particular pasture. I'm right across the front fence from Bruce Blackstock, where you were this morning. My dad had done flood irrigation and grazing and hay and all of that sort of stuff on that piece of ground for, you know, more than 50 years. When I started running chickens there, the first year I did it, you could see the tracks from the nitrogen, from the chicken poop. They're very enthusiastic little nitrogen spreaders. And it was amazing. I mean, the grass just greened up and jumped out of the ground behind those guys. And we do managed grazing. I move my steers from paddock to paddock to paddock every day. You could see them. They would see that grass and they go, whoop, right there. You know, I mean, it was candy. You know, and so they ate it all and got fat, and life was good. And then my customers asked for turkeys. I love the turkeys.
The turkey's like, why?
Oh, where did it go? Where'd my picture go? Where did it go?
There it is.
No, I had another picture and I must have just made it go away. So one of the things that had to happen, because you know people don't actually want me to sell them a live chicken, is we had to figure out how to process them. And nobody else in the state of Nevada was doing it, and so we had to teach the regulators how to regulate us, which was annoying. But you know, eventually it happened, and we built a state licensed poultry processor, and now you know there's another one down in Las Vegas now. But you know, we're kind of the only game in town as far as that goes, and so a big chunk of our time is figuring out how to manage being able to do all of this work to raise these animals, plus the very long and arduous work of getting them all processed, which there went my picture, you don't get to see it. The other thing that we've had to do is change our marketing strategy, because we don't sell to cattle buyers like my dad did. You know, Dad would go down to the bar, you know, when it came to be about time, and he'd, you know, buy a few drinks for the cattle buyer, and, you know, they'd shake hands and have a deal and off went his animals. I can't do that anymore. I sell to people like John. You know, I sell to millennials. This is most of my customer base.
My wife loves it.
Yeah, you know, they're great customers of mine. And so, and the other thing too is, part of this is branding, part of this is public relations. The cattle industry as a whole has an awful lot of enemies, frankly. There are people who don't like us. And so, you know, we love the animals too, and we are doing everything in our power to create a wholesome product and a good life for these animals, and a good life for ourselves while we're at it. We're not, you know, we're not the devil. And so we started having a farmer's market out at our place, which has been a huge success. And so people like Josh come out there. People come from all over. They bring their kids. They play in the creek. They see, you know, they see the chickens. They say hi to my llama. You know, I mean, every selfie in Facebook that checks in at our place has a picture of themselves with this stupid llama. You know, but anyway, we spend a lot of time on the internet, you know, talking to these people. We sell via our website. We, you know, we still sell custom beef, but we make a lot more money, and we emphasize more selling directly to people through the farmers market, through our CSA, through the website. We're working with a web designer right now. These are some concepts he has. And we've engaged our customers. They tell us how to sell to them. These pictures, most of the pictures on my website came from our customers. When we get these concepts for the logos, I'm going to ask my customers which one to use. You know, these people are invested in my success. And so, you know, they don't complain when I charge them what it costs me to raise this stuff, right? They all have a stake in this too. There's one of my customers with the chicken. He gives me good recipes. There's another picture of a couple of fillets from one of my customers. There's another one for you. So anyway, these days we'll probably, I mean, I could sell twice as many chickens as I could raise. I'm going to raise about 2,500 this year. I could sell twice that. We sell to restaurants, one restaurant here in town, a couple of restaurants in Reno, one in Carson City. The chefs tell us it's the best they've ever had, and I believe them. It's a nice problem to have, to not be able to produce enough for your customers. We just need to figure out the logistics of making that happen. Yeah?
That breed that you got from France, is that, it looks kind of like an Orpington or a Rhode Island Red?
They're a Freedom Ranger, is what they're called.
That's what they're called?
Yeah, they're Freedom Rangers. Yeah, they're a four-way hybrid like the Cornish cross is, but they're bred specifically to be good foragers.
Good foragers.
Yeah, good foragers. They, unlike a Cornish cross, they won't die if you don't get around to butchering them in time. They can live normal chicken lives. They know enough to run away from a hawk, which around here counts. They do lay. I had a couple that were just so darn cute I couldn't stand to process them, so they're with my layers now.
describe your fencing arrangement and I assume they have some sort of a house they go into in the evening?
For the chickens?
Or are they even out all day?
Yeah, they free range all day. What I've done is I have some Kenco electric fences. The Label Rouge standards are that each chicken has to have 22 square feet of range, plus they have to have, you know, whatever X amount in the coop at night. But anyway, so I've enclosed that much space for each coop, so that much or more, so that the birds can have, you know, the appropriate amount of space to range. They have to spend at least half of their life out on pasture. So what I do is, you know, because of the ecosystem here, they live 4 to 5 weeks in the brooder, just, you know, waiting for them to feather out and for it to get warm enough to put them outside. Then they spend the rest of their lives outside. So I put them in at night and then they free range during the day.
Are these pullets or cockerels, or
both?
Where are you getting them from?
The first year we did this, I worked with a bunch of different hatcheries around, and as it turned out, a hatchery called Freedom Ranger Hatchery, and that's all they range, is they brought in the French lines, and they were the best foragers. They produced the best for us. Knew how to run away from hogs.
Where are they located?
Freedom Ranger Hatchery, they're back in Pennsylvania. So yeah, it's great. The post office loves me. Every once in a while I get a very noisy box of chicks and they say, your chicks are here. You know, and so beep, 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 beep. It's awesome. Yeah.
How long are they raised?
So the Label Rouge standards are that they have to go a minimum of 81 days. If you compare that with the commercial chicken industry, the industrial raised chicken in this country lives about 6 weeks. They turn around about 6 weeks. It's one of the reasons why they're so cheap, frankly. So.
And just for comparison, if you raise your own Rhode Island Reds or something, they're not really ready to eat for much longer than that.
Yeah, they're quite a bit longer. We actually raised some Rhode Island Red roosters, and they got to processing size at about 16 weeks. They were delicious, but it took a long time to raise them.
A lot more feed.
A lot more feed. Yeah.
Do you ship to Vegas?
I do. Anyway, I could sell poultry anywhere in the state of Nevada. Actually, Josh and I have been talking about possibly developing a restaurant business down there for both of our products. So if we can figure out the transportation, then that part will be easier.
And your beef also?
Yeah, beef is USDA. I can sell anywhere in the country and do. I ship coast to coast and border to border. Yeah.
Where I'm from in California, I grow produce, did, and retired now, for the produce and eggs and stuff for a farmer's market. And the lack of a slaughterhouse has been a death knell.
It's hard.
For so many sheep ranchers and even cattle and chickens, and it's just, I mean, you can't overemphasize it. I mean, and I was shocked that when you mentioned you had to start your own, I thought, God, out here in the middle of Nevada, that must have been really...
ridiculously expensive? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to, and,
Yeah.
and the bureaucracy and the health standards and everything is just...
Well, you know, what they did is they essentially, the only legislation that they had, when we built this thing, we were operating under the state health department as opposed to the Department of Agriculture. And so the only standards they had were restaurant standards. So we built a restaurant on a trailer. It is a legal commercial kitchen. And that's what we had to build. So you know, the upshot of that is when I get tired of doing this, it's built on a refrigerated semi-trailer. Somebody can back a truck up to it and leave with it. So that gives me more places I can sell it when the time comes. But in the meantime, it works very well for us for a poultry processing plant.
Who processes your beef?
So the beef is all USDA. And so that raises its own challenges. What I do is I bring it to a USDA butcher called Wolfpack Meats over in Reno. They do the kill. And then I have the cut and wrap done at a different USDA butcher called Ponderosa Meats. And the reason I do that, beyond the fact that Ponderosa does an excellent job, and it's very hard to get into Wolfpack because they're so busy, but Ponderosa delivers back to Elko. Saves me a trip. So that's really kind of a no-brainer for me.
See, in Las Vegas, in Clark County, they outlawed it. Nobody can butcher anything. The one butcher we had there, John Malls, he can only do deer and elk and stuff. And so, in my little place in the middle of Las Vegas, I raised a couple of lambs and a couple of people. We used to be able to take them to jump. You can't do that anymore. I don't even know where I can go other than out of state or possibly Nye County.
You know,
It's ridiculous.
yeah, Clark County Health, Southern Nevada Health, those guys, I think they want everything to have a huge carbon footprint and to come in from a country that isn't this one. You know, I mean, they're out of their minds.
They have a little guy out of business who raised quail there for all the restaurants and everything.
Yep.
His place was like pristine, you could eat off the floor, it was amazing. They put him out of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who did this? Who does this? Who put it out of business?
Clark County, Southern Nevada Health District. Yeah, there was a farm down there that, and this just blows my mind. There was a farm down there that had a farm to fork dinner for their clients, and because they didn't pull an event permit, these guys came in and poured bleach over all the food, sent everybody home. Yeah, I mean, just these, just
They put
yeah.
RC Farms out of business, that they made him move out of town.
Yeah, they're just, you know, we're fortunate here that the gal who does my inspections for me and Josh's inspections for him, she really wants to see us succeed. I mean, she's a hard ass, don't get me wrong, you know, and she'll call you on everything she sees. But her job is not to shut us down. Her job is to help us do a better job and succeed. And we are blessed to have somebody like that on our side.